Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the market, that is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to hopefully make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today, we have hype surging another 5%, going past $40, and the meme coins are running hot too. We'll discuss where liquidity is flowing in just a little bit. We've got Solana ETFs potentially being approved in 4 months as the SEC requests issuers to update S1 filings. And finally, Infinex announced the Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and XRP are now tradable on chain via near intents. That's some cool tech. We're also delighted to say we've got Kain, founder of Infinex, joining us a little bit later towards the show, dialing in towards the end. Very excited for that conversation. We'll be having lots of these dial-ins routinely, trying to host some of the best conversations in crypto. Infinex definitely is classified as one of those at the moment. So looking forward to have Kain join us a little bit later. I'm also joined by Brad and Legendary in the co-host seats today. We are ready to get into it, but just a reminder, friends, before we do, nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky. We do not know anything for sure, so please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Wednesday. It's the 11th of June. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, doing fantastic. I just came back from my third interval hyperoxia training, and it's starting to show in the numbers. HRV is going up, the heart rate variability, that is, which is a good sign. BPM is going down a bit. Felt really energized after this one, so that is
so
nice.
You just take the oxygen and it just changes your numbers and you become a better human.
That is the simplified version of the idea behind that. Yeah.
Sounds too easy.
Basically, what do we do? It's 1 hour. It's intervals of 3 and 5 minutes, 3 minutes with more saturated air with like 30-ish% of oxygen, and then 5 minutes with 12%, which is kind of like an altitude of 4,500 meters or 15,000 feet in freedom units. And it is simulating basically being up high on a mountain.
Okay. So it's like a portfolio allocation, but for air.
I like Atari God in the YouTube comments is saying my guy is paying to be suffocated.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, but it's having some benefits perhaps. Brad, how are you doing your side? What do you make of this air work?
Yeah, I can't advocate for what he's doing, but I can claim similar performance improvements because I have my house back, and my sleep has improved measurably. I've been sleeping on the couch for like the last week.
It's as simple as having no guests.
Yeah. I mean, I don't live in a big place, so like we were splitting it with some family just to like get them out here. You know, it's a 5-hour flight, so try to accommodate them. And yeah, so they left yesterday, so I got to sleep in my own bed for the first time in a little bit. That was nice. Back to it's day 0 of my normal schedule, so I'm pretty excited for that.
The normal schedule, which must mean rising back up the Mega ETH leaderboard. Brad, there was some deep concern on the timeline. It sounded like you had 2 days off with family, and it felt like people were panicking.
Yeah, I haven't checked my noties. Yeah, I haven't checked my noties today, but like I had seen some pictures over the last few. And it's even some like a Et tu Brute situation with Legendary here. He's the one that's flipping me on the charts. He bought his bad buns and is riling up all the bunnies because he's like the top holder or some shit. So yeah, he's cultivating a cult.
Cultivating a cult. Like that. Sounds good. Look, guys, we've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get straight into it. Just a reminder, if you're just joining us, we announced it yesterday. We do have Kain, founder of Infinex, joining us towards the end of the show today. We're going to be running the usual show for the first half an hour or so. Around 7:45 a.m. Eastern time, Kain will be joining us. So looking forward to that conversation, but getting you up to date straight away with what you need to know. First, let's get to the majors, starting with Bitcoin. As usual, Bitcoin is flat, $109,000. We've got ETH up a couple of percent to 2.77 ledge. I don't know if you'd rather that be 2.8, but it's not 2.8. That's the thing. It says 2.770. XRP is up a percent to $2.30. BNB is up a percent to 660. Solana is up 4% to $164. And our favorite alt majors, Hyperliquid, up. Oh, okay. Now it just says a couple of percent. It told me anything between 5 and 8% earlier. Up $41.76, and SUI is up a couple of percent to $3.50. Getting into the meme coin side of things, big movement here across the board with a lot of the rest of the green in the market. Got Doge up 5% to 20 cents. Got SPX up 11%. This is obviously Murad's coin. This is up 30% on the week as well. The big outperformer, to be perfectly honest, out of all the meme coins. SPX up 11% on the day to $1.50. Fartcoin is also up 6% back to $1.34. That dipped underneath $1 like just a few days ago. So that's up 26% on the week. WIF is actually down 4%. Pengu's up. Pengu's actually flat today. Trying to find some other big movers. Giga is up 13%. Launchcoin again up 12% back to 240 mil FDV. So that's kind of back to where people were speculating on it before it dipped quite hard. Anime is down 25%. That was up quite a lot the last few days. It has gone back down. Just another one to point out, Rect is up another 4%. Rect went down as low as like 20 mil FDV and is back up to now 130. That's like a clean 6x of those lows not so long ago. So real performance here, especially on the ETH meme side. I think we'll be talking about SOL a little bit as one of the headlines. So we'll get to that discussion in a bit, getting into the headlines themselves. So Hype's holding above 40 and the memes are running. We'll talk about that in a bit. Solana ETFs could be approved in 4 months as the SEC requests issuers to update their S1 filings. And finally, Infinex announced that Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and XRP are now tradable on-chain via near intents. Some notable price action. I kind of mentioned these already. Fartcoin is up big, back to 134. SPX back to 150, and Launchcoin up 20% or so to 23 cents not long ago. Ledge, anything we need to know on the NFT side?
Yeah, there is 2 collections I want to get into. One is connecting to SPX Moritz coin, as you already mentioned, and it's Project Eon, the NFT collection associated with that, which is up 6% over the last 24 hours. However, the more impressive figure there is it's up 95% over the last week. You just said SPX is up 30-ish, 35-ish%. So at a 1.7 ETH floor, almost doubled up over the last week, is actually outperforming the token associated to it. And the other collection I wanted to point out are the Ethos validators. They've been on a pretty impressive climb. Yesterday went as high as 4.75 ETH, now have corrected down a bit, although the floor is a very thin one and are right now sitting at 4.2 ETH, which means they're up 9% over the last 24 hours and up 50% over the last 7 days.
Love it. Excellent summary there.
I'm doing the same thing I did with Kaito. If we get anything that is close to a TGE, I am yeeting that thing at like a week or 2 before peak froth, because that turned out to be the play with Kaito. I'm going to see if I can run it back.
What did you sell your Kaito on for? Was it like 10 at the peak or 11?
Like 11 or 12, yeah.
Wow. When ETH was high as well, or?
I don't recall that.
Can't
so like
remember.
we don't talk about ETH price on this show.
We don't.
But in ETH denomination, it was the peak.
Yeah. I really think it's a very healthy play to sell into the hype, especially when it comes to TGE. Sounds quite like a smart idea. Okay, getting into the rest of the roundup to get up to speed with the other bits of news that you need to know. Crypto exchange bullish, backed by Peter Thiel, files for US IPO. I think we're going to be in for a little bit of an IPO season now after the success of Circle. Societe Generale will issue a stablecoin on ETH and Solana, with BNY acting as asset custodian. This is the big French bank. OpenTrade announces an additional $7 million of funding to take stablecoin yield mainstream. This is not such good news. Connecticut passes legislation barring the state and local governments from investing in crypto. Could be a little bit of a fork in the road here, with different states opting for different strategies and having different perspectives on Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. In other news, the CLED team accused of announcing $500,000 buybacks, after which the founding team sold $800,000 of tokens. I say accused there, but the founder kind of admitted that, and then there's just questions as to whether that's appropriate or not. I'm sure that happens all the time in this space, where founders come up with like bullish announcements and then sell into it in the same way we're just talking there, Brett, about like have a bullish announcement and then just, sell yourself, but you don't necessarily expect the team to be doing that themselves, right? Rise announces a further $4 million raise from Galaxy, earlier support from Vitalik, amongst others. They're actually building an ultra-fast L2. Curious about that because we seem to have a bunch of L2s now and some pretty fast ones. So curious about that. And then finally, Pudgy Penguins announced they've acquired the PENGU ticker on Hyperliquid to get some trading activity over there. That is the Web3 Roundup to get you up to speed with everything else that's happening in space. Before we get into the main headlines today, what are we interested in? Brett, let's go to you first. What's catching your attention outside of the main headlines?
I see you also missed the PENGU ticker purchase thing. I saw that yesterday, but the announcement was actually on the 6th. Like the actual tweet that they did for that was like, if I'm recalling correctly, was not yesterday.
Really?
So yeah. I mean,
so have I got this from your feed?
Yeah, you got it. I got it from a Hyperliquid dude that I was following who was retweeting it, and then and then I retweeted it, and then after I retweeted it, I was like, "Damn, this thing's from the 6th. I missed this entirely." But I think it's still something worth talking about it because
there's a small chance I could have seen it, reported on it, and just forgotten about it.
Also possible
with all the news we report on, but
also possible.
Carry on.
Yeah, but like I think it's just like it's worth talking about because that is clearly a project with an L2 that has incentives to like control and cabal all of the trading that it goes around PENGU, and you just continuously see stuff from the Pudgy Penguins team that they're maximizing for distribution at all times, always. Like that is their North Star, right? Like the first thing was launching the token on Solana. Whenever we're like, what the hell are you doing? You're on Ethereum. You could have done it on Base. You could have done it on your own chain, like all this shit. And they're just like, look, people are on Solana. So we're launching this thing on Solana. Like everything else after that, be damned. Like we're just doing it. And then the next thing was like this. It was like, well, they have an L2. They're trading. They're like, they literally incentivize everything through their abstract global wallet and all this shit. And then they went out and acquired PENGU on Hyperliquid. And you go, why the hell are you doing that? You're just going to give liquidity and volume and all this shit to Hyperliquid and like lose out on everything you could have captured. And then it's distribution. Hyperliquid is where people are. They think that trading is going to be there. They want to be at least side by side with everything that takes place in that venue if it's going to continue to be the thing that thrives. So, I was pretty bearish with the PENGU launch on Solana, just like I was for Dude, just like I was for like any of those NFT collections doing that stuff. I still think ultimately it leads to a really, really messy ecosystem for them, and like may not be the best strategic thing for them to do that. But like I can respect the commitment to constantly going, with the distribution.
Do you think that's the inevitable outcome for this? Because I know Rect as well, like the token from Rect Brands by AAVE, they are on Mainnet and they're on Base. And do you think this is just going to be the trend where you just need to be everywhere, wherever there is liquidity, you need to be?
No, it's not a requirement for sure. It's a strategy that you can take. Like PENGU is like always optimized for that, right? It's always been touch points. They want to be in malls. They want to be a Giphy. They want to have as many different touch points with as many different cohorts of people as possible. I don't know that necessarily is a requirement or is the right move for all brands everywhere, but it's the thing that they have clearly, for instance, day one, like attempted to tackle, at least day one since Luca took over, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. That sounds fair. Ledge, any comments there? Anything else catching your attention before we get into the main headlines?
Nothing to add to what Brett just said. However, on the other piece of news that I found interesting is to do with Societe Generale and the stablecoins that they're issuing both on ETH and Solana with BNY. I think that is just a continuation of what we've already seen with banks getting together, forming a consortia to launch their own stablecoins, with companies like Uber, Airbnb, Apple looking into accepting stablecoin payments. Again, I think this is how I see adoption happening and how I see more people familiarizing themselves with stablecoins. But it begs basically the same question that you just asked. bread in terms of, do you need to have your token on all the L2s? And in this case, it's a similar problem as to what will happen in a landscape where there's going to be so many different stable coins and how to unify those. And this is why I really understand what Plasma did with their sale, with their raise, which we commented on, which is you could send USDC, you could send DAI, obviously you could send Tether as well, but other stable coins as, to your Plasma deposits. And all of those will be converted to Tether if you haven't sent Tether natively already. So I think we're going to see multiple aggressive yield-related plays for stablecoins and stablecoin issuers trying to gain some more market share in a similar fashion how PayPal did it with PYUSD. That was the correct ticker, offering
the worst ticker.
Say it again.
The worst ticker. That's probably the worst ticker I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no, there's a worse one for stablecoins. It's Euro. It's EURC, EURC. It's impossible to pronounce.
That's pretty bad.
In a smooth way as well. Yeah. Anyhow, so I think there's going to be more yield opportunities for stablecoins to look at, where you can just be a mercenary and farm whatever SocGen or whatever any other issue will offer for a couple months, and then move your stablecoins around. And that's definitely an interesting market and play field to watch.
Did Blast do it first? Did Blast do it first?
Probably in that aggressive fashion, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't participate heavily at the start, so like I didn't remember the initial flow, but obviously they did USDB, they captured their own yield, they try to pass that on to the ecosystem. Is it coming like a Simpsons thing where like, because Blast did so much stuff right and then just like fumbled it back? Although I will say, like, did you guys see the Thruster announcement?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, Thruster, for those in the crowd who don't know, Thruster was like one of the primary dexes on the chain. They announced that they're shutting down, right? It's like, okay, going away. And one of the responses from Pac-Man that I saw on that, apparently like he's chatting in some kind of on-chain thing. I don't know. I'm not there, but people post pictures of him actually talking. And he's just like, we plan on building all that ourselves. It's like, we want to curate the experience. We want to have lending. We want to have the DEX. We want to own all of this shit as the first party app. And like, we think that's the way, because you can curate the experience. You can make sure everything's good. And you know what that is? Like, that's the Hyperliquid playbook. Yeah. Like, that's Hyperliquid has the first party app that drives the fees to the thing. And then ultimately, like, because they get usage, it's making the token valuable, which makes me wonder, like he's not dumb. He did so much stuff right. He did the yield-bearing stablecoin native yield on the chain. He did the contract source revenue, so that like developers, when they get activity on their contracts, like got funding back to them, right? The gas rebates. They did the point farming early meta to attract the users. Like, they did all that stuff to get the right people to bootstrap the ecosystem by funneling their token through them. And then the token just flopped and they didn't have any follow through. And now they're doing the Hyperliquid thing. I just wonder if like, if you had to bet today, right now, 50-50 chance, what side are you landing on? Is Blast going to have a resurgence at some point? Or is like the goodwill burned too heavily?
Good question. I think resurgence from its current position, I would actually bet yes, because it's so low. And if you're just talking about, like, if the line is here for the people who are watching, just listening in, if you're so low and you're saying, well, is there going to be a resurgence? Yes, it's going to be better, because I think whatever they build will be good. And so it will attract some people. The question is, will they be able to create? One of their best things all the time was that their go-to-market strategy was so good. The way they captured the attention and kind of circulated it around the ecosystem. I don't know if they've got the incentives in their back pocket anymore to do that necessarily. So I think that's the real challenge there. But do I think it's going to be good? I do think so. And it doesn't matter ultimately how bad they've fumbled certain things. Oh, as it definitely matters. And that's not been good. I don't think that matters to the quality of their product. I think their product is still going to be good, but and it will catch people's attention, but will it be enough? I'm not sure. Interesting question. Ledge, the follow-on question I had on Circle before we get into the main headlines is, sorry, you weren't talking about Circle, you were talking about all these other stable coins. Does that mean you are bearish Circle at some point? We've already spoken about the various challenges Circle has in its business model. It gives up a lot of its revenue to Coinbase. does that mean with the influx of all the other stablecoin issuers coming in, everyone wants to slice of that market share? Do you still like holding the low float, high FTV Circle token?
I think Circle is still in a fantastic position. Yes, stock has corrected down a bit. It's down 8% to $105 after it did rally as high as 120 and was like trading at 115 yesterday. However, they still have a $60 billion market cap. And any other stablecoin issuer banking consortium, if it's not for like the city groups of this world, the really big ones, which we spoke about, which could easily have liquidity in the billions, other banks are going to struggle to come up with a meaningful number. Even it's going to be what? It's going to be 500 mil, 700 mil, 1, 2, 3 bill. That is not a lot of money to trade in a meaningful way on a larger scale. Now, not every bank wants that. Not every bank wants to participate in the Web3 and DeFi era or ecosystem. They'd be just happy to experiment around with stablecoins, see if it's the more efficient payment rail for them. But I still think that Circle is in a fantastic position. And you can see that even someone like Circle is struggling to do meaningful, get meaningful liquidity to the URC, to the Euro stablecoin that we just spoke about. URC has, let me quickly check that. It's a stablecoin that I hold. I told you on the show multiple times that I like it because it is just my home currency. And it's the currency that I pay taxes in. So for me, it makes sense to hold euros. And the total market cap of that is 200 mil roughly. That's nothing. So if you hold just quote unquote just 2 mil in URC, you hold 1% of the whole stablecoin supply, and you don't want to be such a large holder in a stablecoin ecosystem. It's not a meme coin where you like have to have your 3 to 5% and hope it's going to do a 1000x. You actually want to be a small fish with that. So with all those things considered, I do still think that Circle is in a great spot when it comes to USDC.
Okay. Yeah, my general thesis when different countries come to market when the stablecoin thing is that it will simply reveal that I don't think people need to come to market. I don't think the UK needs to come to the market with a digital pound. If there was any demand for a digital pound, there would already be one. There would already be a market for it. Like this market has existed for a long enough time. Maybe there even is one, but I don't know about it because it's probably irrelevant. The only stablecoin that matters is the dollar, and that's what every other country wants to transact in as well. So we're, in spite of the dollar having all of its issues, especially now with the debt spiraling, like the stable coin dollar, I think will continue to be the most transacted in moving forward. So businesses involved in that, I think, should be fine as long as they can capture their share. Right. That's the take there.
I'm going to tack onto that. You mentioned earlier about we think a flow of IPOs are going to be coming for that. Like, I don't know how much you guys have actually heard or seen like some of the rumors, but through the podcast circuit, there are people with insider knowledge has said roughly about 5 IPOs that were scheduled for either late this year or 2026, maybe even 2027, are basically all after seeing Circle's thing. Like, they're not necessarily all stablecoins, but they are all now like basically announced to be within the next few months internally. So yeah, we're going to see more.
I like the wording of internally when everyone's filing confidentially for an IPO, but we still have the names of the companies on the timeline. That's pretty hilarious.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, do you know, an interesting thought I had the other day, like you remember when Portal launched the gaming coin? I went from the original thought is that Portal was like this humongous loop, and then every other launch after was smaller and smaller. I started to think, like, in the end, what that first launch captured, this is, by the way, the gaming token, which went to 4 or 5 bill, fully diluted valuation, obviously a low float. But in a way, what that valuation captured was every single next valuation. It's not just the fact this was a big one and everyone was smaller. It was like all of the expectations of the whole industry for gaming specifically was added up and put into that very first launch. And that's why it kind of exploded in the way that it did. And when that bubble started to pop, it was like, well, there's nothing left to give to anyone else because that represented everything. And I don't know, I've started thinking through that framework a little bit more now. As I think there's something, it's obviously not a one-to-one situation because some of these companies coming to market will be far more sophisticated, although I've seen some criticism of this bullish IPO from this exchange, because apparently hardly anyone uses it anyway, despite it being backed by Peter Thiel. But I think it's going to be a little bit like that, right? Circle's going to capture all the thing. It is a good company. It's going to capture a lot of the attention and imagination and energy and capital. And then everything else is going to, it's going to get dispersed across whatever's left, and it's going to be decreasing gains for them, I think. Brett, did you want to close that off? Oh, Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my man. What are your thoughts here?
GM, no, very exciting times. And it's not only just those 5 that are probably saying, hey, we're going to IPO, like Brett was saying. I actually, when I was at that University of Miami blockchain conference a couple weeks back, I was talking to several accountants, and they said they're getting flooded with calls from companies that want to do IPOs now, that are in the industry, and they just want to get their books right and start the whole process. So beyond the 5, there's an entire backlog of people like rushing to accounting firms and everything else, saying like, hey, we want to IPO right now. So this Circle thing has kicked off something massive.
Yeah, I think that
reminds me of. Sorry, it reminds me of when was that? 2017, Long Island Iced Tea. Do you remember that story? Then they rebranded to Long Blockchain Corp, and the stock surged like 380, 400-ish% after that. And I think ICO Beast had to take that we might be rerunning a little ICO season with IPO season this year, and it's going to be probably the same roller coaster model, which we all like so much in CT, with the loops getting smaller and smaller after every IPO.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, but let's see. Okay, good discussion on the stablecoin stuff. It's going to be increasingly relevant. We've also been talking about plasma the other day as well, so relevant in that regard too. Let's get into the main headlines today. Ledge, hype is not actually up as much as I thought it was. The data seems to be changing on me. It's still holding above 42. Do you want to just give some general thoughts here on what's going on with Hyperliquid and maybe the meme coin market, which is going aggressively hot at the moment? How are you kind of positioning yourself or thinking about those more risk-on assets at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. We did speak about Hyperliquid yesterday in terms of some opportunities. So what I want to do today is to point out this post by War Daddy Capital, speaking about the hyperunit bridge, or the asset layer, which is probably the more accurate way of describing it. And it has done over $6 billion in spot volume and over 360 million in spot major deposits in just under 4 months. Definitely still think that the actual awareness for Hyperunit, also if you look at the Hyperunit account, it is what, like 19K followers, is not the highest. And in terms of strategies, I'm going to get into the meme coin and launching side separately. We spoke yesterday about the things that we like. Obviously, that is there to re-listen on the show. But also for people who want to get more into that, where is it? Pix had an article that he shared yesterday of what his strategy is, how he's getting exposure to unit assets, basically also talking about his delta neutral strategy. We all spoke about Liminal here, which is a protocol that's basically doing that for you in an automated fashion. So going long on, say, BTC, having a short on the perp set of an equivalent size to have a delta neutral strategy and just get some spot volume plus some exposure to unit assets. Pix is explaining how to do that exactly, and also talking about some of the other things that, some of which we touched on, some of which we did not touch on. He's also focusing more on the liquid staking side of things with Hyperbeat and Hyperdrive. I think we spoke about Hyperdrive not yesterday, but a couple of weeks ago. But anyhow, I do find his article a very, very helpful primer to get started with a good strategy. And then the other thing, and that touches on the meme coin side of things more, is that I feel that more people are getting into Hype, but very little people are like active on Hype EVM. Yes, we had stuff like Liquid Launch, which we spoke about on the show quite a few times, running as high as 80 mil. I think it corrected down a bit to 73 mil or so as like the launchpad for the Hype EVM. But I still think that there's not a lot of people using Hype EVM right now. That's probably a very good place to look and explore and play around with after you get a bit familiar with the spot and perp side of things.
Agree. Agree. If you're looking to speculate and be early-ish, like obviously not as early as you were before, but the activity there is not as high as you might expect. One question about the other meme side of things, Ledge. You've got a lot of the ETH memes running. You've got SPX moving hard. Okay, Fartcoin is on Solana, but that's moving pretty aggressively. Rect, as I just mentioned before, is up almost 6x off the lows. Where do you see? I think there's definitely been a movement away from memes. So do you want to talk like relatively seriously about memes just for 1 minute? You know, that it was the main thing up until like January this year, along with maybe AI agents, which were basically memes as well, to be honest. That was, they were kind of the main thing. And then suddenly we've got this revenue focus. We've got proper protocols that make money and you can analyze with revenue and invest in on maybe a more solid footing. Do you think we are in? Do you think we are awaiting another meme season? Because they're not doing terribly at all. Do you have a particular view there?
Yeah, I think that definitely the daily runners have gone away or are way smaller than that. It takes more effort for a new meme to establish itself in a significant way. We have, because you said AI agents are also basically memes. We have Iris, the Virtuals launch, which we spoke about yesterday, which is now the first AI agent by Virtuals happening on ETH mainnet. I mean, the pledging is still on base, but the agent will be on mainnet, which will start in 21 minutes, actually, exactly on the hour. But we're still going to run the show. So I think it takes more effort for new things to establish themselves right now. And the thing is, with the established memes with SPX, etc., they might still have a good way to go up, but it's just not my forte in trading them. I did tremendously well on the AI agents. I think I rather do well in basically an emerging trend rather than like more saturated meme markets.
Yeah.
So this is why I am not really participating in that too much, other than holding a I would say pretty significant Fartcoin position, which I've been holding for quite a while, but I'm not reallocating to SPX. So I'm also not holding Pepe. I know Rahim likes the Pepe trade and sees it as like 3x leveraged exposure to ETH, but that's not a trade for me.
I like that mode of thinking. Go on, Brad.
I would say, like, you're talking about like where you want to spend your time and a little bit on the hyper EVM stuff. I was just trying to look back at their stats, just like of their actual the EVM side of the house, and see, okay, like, is it down? Is it up? Like how it is? And it's basically back to what it was pre like froth moment. Like I think we all remember it was around May 25th, so about 2-3 weeks ago, where things like everything was hyper. Like people were crashing in to go like learn about it and do stuff. And I think daily transaction fees spiked, or like cumulative transaction fees spiked to around $200,000 in burned hype while over there, but has basically settled back down to what it was before that. It's pretty stark looking, but like it was burning between like 100 and 120 hype a day before that. And then at its peak over that like 5-day stretch, it burned like nearly 6,000 hype, just in people transacting, because it's a small ecosystem. And then now it's hovering around like 500 a day. So it is higher than it was before, but it is considerably lower than it was at the height of the froth.
Nice. So it kind of settled a little bit higher than before, not as high as in the mania period. Good to ground that in some data. Right, we've got one headline to go before we get into the interview today. You might have seen or heard we do have Kain, founder of Infinex, joining us in around 5 minutes, I believe. So we will have the final headline, and then we'll get into that interview. Looking forward to that in just a bit. Brad, before we get there, going to talk Solana a little bit here, ETFs and what's going on Sol.
Yeah, this one's pretty short. So the headline is Solana ETFs could be approved in 4 months as SEC request issues update to S1 filings. And this is mostly just like that's it. That's what it is. And you have a few quotes from Eric Balkunas in there that just says like, it's expecting a lower inflow once it does go live. They're saying Solana specifically would be lucky to get a whole billion in inflows, same as XRP. XRP is another one that is speculated to come live with Solana. But the takeaway is just that this quote is that we think that in July there could be a basket with Solana, XRP, Ether, and Bitcoin live as ETFs. This S1 filing is the same stuff that we saw ahead of time with both the Bitcoin and the Ethereum ETFs. We were looking for these signals to say like, hey, like they're actually going through the paperwork. They're actually having to dot their I's and cross their T's. And because they're doing that, we can anticipate that it's not far on the horizon. So that's basically what it is. It's just saying it'll happen. It'll get low inflows. I know whenever they said the same thing for Ethereum, like, hey, they're not going to get a lot of inflows. We made fun of them because it did get some good inflows, and then it did not get any inflows for a very long time. So I think he was directionally correct on like the market demand for it. But the timing was a little off. There was a surge initially. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see the same here. It's coming in a frothy moment. So I like some of some of the Solana holding companies started to run on this announcement. I think I saw like 18% and like 15% on things that either just signal that they're strong Solana developing ecosystems, or they straight up were just a holding company for SOL. So like there is a little bit of market appetite and like excitement for this. With how that'll translate to actual inflows, you know, TBD.
I like it. Brad, thinking through the data, like I think there are a lot of people asking the question now. Hype's obviously become this super prominent chain, a lot of activity and excitement going on there. Definitely stolen some of SOL's thunder, right? Like I know that they're kind of different things, and SOL definitely has its own bull case, but some of the thunder has been taken, I think. Are you noticing anything in the data that would suggest anything to worry about from that perspective? Is it still overly dependent on the meme coin market, which we were just talking about being like slightly more vulnerable now? What are you thinking?
I mean, are you talking about the asset specifically, like Solana, the asset?
Activity on chain, which you would hope has some bearing on the price of the asset sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, so has activity dipped since like recent moments? No, it has not. Like it's still the commanding the lion's share of like Rev being the big metric that actually tracks a lot of this stuff, right? That's just like economic activity and demand that's taking place for blockchain. Most of that is still roughly the same. Is it disproportionately like pump driven information? Absolutely. But it's always been that way. And people have been saying that's not sustainable for a long time. And it's been pretty fucking sustainable. And now with pump pivoting to like more of a streaming platform and trying to raise that $1 billion, and then probably, I would imagine, continue to expand their reach on top of the Solana blockchain and pull in people and use cases and all these other things. I like, you just gotta kind of wait and see. But the data isn't showing right now that like it is waning relative to everything else. But you mentioned just losing some attention. Hype obviously is the one that's stealing some of the narrative for trading specifically, or at least high frequency trading, cloud based trading. That's the big vertical that they're losing on. And frankly, like it becomes kind of a technological thing, where it's like clubs demand a higher frequency, lower latency environment to be able to exist on chain, which is why Hyperliquid had to do it in a very controlled environment, right? They have 12 validators in the same data center running running their own code. Like that would not be possible on Solana mainnet right now, which is why Drift and a few of these other clubs that were perp platforms that are attempted to be built over there just have lost a lot of market share to a Hyperliquid. The experience is better because the performance is better, and Solana's trying to catch up to that, but it'll take time. They have a few announcements later this year, doubling the block space. They're gonna, Fire Dancer comes fully online, but there's the questions of how long that actually takes.
So from a non-technical person, it's like they're kind of dealing with the same kind of thing ETH had to deal with in a way. It's like there's something else that's more performant than you now, and you've got to respond technologically.
This is always going to be the case with networks that gain traction, right? Like a network gains traction, it gets a little more decentralized. There's more people, there's more cooks in the kitchen. It's harder to come to agreement on stuff. You can't move as fast because you have capital on the chain, right? You can't like just eat updates because there's a lot of risk. So it becomes like a time factor of like you ossifying a little bit, trying to fight that ossification to continue to innovate and deliver and draw in users. But you move slower, you get more clients. Like right now they have AAVE, they have Fire Dancer, or Franken Dancer is the ones online. So like any change that they want to do, right? If you guys paid attention to the Solana recent conference, they announced Alpenglow, which is like a change to their consensus. Like because you have more than one client, and a client being the thing that is like how the chain operates. It's how, like, what it is. Because Anza is the company that did the consensus change, like all of the shit that they did and all of the stuff that's been worked on for Frankendancer for the last fucking 3 years, or Fire Dancer, I should say, like the consensus exists in the client. So like now they have to push all that shit to the other team that has been building for 3 years in a specific direction and say, sorry, bro, we just changed this. And if you want to keep up, you're going to have to change everything that you just did over the last 3 years to keep up with this new mechanism that we did, and rewrite it in your own code. So like maybe they just delayed a little bit of the Fire Dancer timeline because they decided that this is how they want to go with consensus because it's more performant. And like, that's now the nature of the beast with all this shit when you're working with multiple parties.
Interesting. Okay. Very, very interesting stuff. Funk, final take here, please, before we look forward to welcoming Kain to the show. We'll be getting into the interview with the founder of Infinex in just a moment. Funky, final take here. Put a bow on this topic for us, please.
Yeah, just a quick counterpoint to Brett. Maybe it is true that SOL has slipped in our eyes for everybody on CT, but for the TradFi bros, it's clearly the de facto number 3. We see this with the ETFs. In fact, Osprey, one of our LPs, they effectively launched the staking SOL ETF. They were first to do it. I think they've already retracted the message because SEC was not too happy with them with their backdoor method of doing so. But the appetite is there for TradFi to just kind of double down on SOL. It's clearly Bitcoin, ETH, Solana. Hype's not really even on their radar at this point. So I think that that's just something to bear in mind, that Solana is still going to have a lot of institutional interest.
Like it. Good to get that outside perspective. Sometimes we're like very much caught up in what we're doing over here. So appreciate that, Funky. Look, guys, as we said at the top of the show, you might have seen, you might have heard, we are delighted to have Kain with us. He is the founder of Synthetics, an OG DeFi protocol, credited with being one of the early pioneers of yield farming. And he's the founder of Infinex, now attempting to create the crypto everything app. Kain, welcome to the stage with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Did you guys plan this? Look at these shirts.
Kain, can you hear us? No.
Testing. Is that Australian? Is the Australian internet?
The Australian internet is no good. Kain, can you hear us now? If you go,
hear you. We're halfway
what
in.
you need to do, Kain, can you hear us? You need to go in the stream. We can't hear you at all. If you go into settings, okay, so bear with us, guys. We're dealing with a little bit of internet difficulties. This is what happens when people are across the world. The internet doesn't work in certain parts. Okay, so
live show.
Did you plan this though?
Well, there we go.
Oh,
there we go.
We've got you.
Okay. Sorry,
Good
I was
stuff,
backstage. I didn't have an editor to help me get myself set up.
All good. Look at this green. Got the two greens on a green day in the market.
Yeah, I noticed that before. I was like, that's a bit weird. I don't usually wear a green shirt, but
Beautiful color coordination. I like it. I'm here for it.
Excellent. So just to start things off, and for the people who don't know, Kain, delighted to have him with us today. He's the founder of Synthetics, OG DeFi protocol, credited with being one of the early pioneers of yield farming, and now the founder of Infinex, now attempting to create the crypto everything app, which we've been speaking about a lot on the show. I am a Patron holder, invested back in September of last year. So delighted to be able to speak to Kain now. Kain, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
So starting things off, maybe with a little bit of a perspective on the market. You've obviously been around a lot longer than us, I think, in crypto. How are you seeing the market at the moment? Like, things are incredibly bullish. People are pretty excited. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, ETH's over 2,500, right? So that's about as bullish as it gets. So
Not long.
dark time.
Don't say it out loud.
I know, it was funny. So I have a call every couple of weeks with the Bodhi guys, which is our prop fund that's out of Lisbon. And, you know, we were reflecting on the fact that if you had asked any of us, like, you know, even 2 or 3 years ago, like Bitcoin's at 110, let's eat that, right? And it was like, it would have been like 6K, 8K. Some crackheads would have said 12K, but no, 2,700. So it's, you know, there's bright spots for some and dark times for others. But, you know, I think the funny thing is we dealt with this for a long time at DeFi, right? Like there was all through the end of 2021, after kind of Feb, March, all of DeFi went down post DeFi summer, even while, you know, the Sol, Luna, AVAX thesis was playing out, which, you know, it's just the way it goes, cycles within cycles.
Indeed. So you mentioned a prop fund that you kind of participated in there. Very curious to hear like what brought your success first in crypto. You've been building for a long time now. I suspect there's maybe a bunch of trading and investing going on at the same time. Like, how did you kind of become successful in this industry?
Definitely building. I was never a great trader. Certainly not a good short time frame trader. Long time frames, I've done pretty well. I was accumulating ETH pretty early, from like, you know, $5 all the way up. So, you know, that played out fairly well. I had a pretty strong thesis there. But at the same time, I also bought a ton of ETH at 4K like multiple times. So, you know, it's you know, the market gives and it takes away, right? But I think building, you know, especially if you're kind of prepared for a long haul, which is you know what I think a lot of people in crypto who are building, you know, they start out and they get washed out really quickly because they're not really prepared for just how insane it is. So, you know, I think it took almost 3 years before I got any liquidity out of SNX. But you know, at the same time, I do actually, I do have a mug behind me. But I got a bunch of other sins as well sitting on the corner back there. But yeah, so I think like the thing that probably helped me the most with synthetics was the fact that you could borrow against it. We had this like inbuilt leverage mechanism, which people don't realize how powerful that was. You know, at one point, I think I had something like 120 or 150 million dollars worth of debt, which is a lot of buying power. And so, you know, when SNX was 6 billion, you could load up on a lot of ETH, and I did. And that you know was at the time a great trade. It wouldn't be as good of a trade the last few years, but certainly back then it was good.
You've been diving onto the like you've been enthusiastic about the return to mainnet narrative recently. Do you still feel that way? Like how the recent developments like got your sentiment for Ethereum broadly?
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the people who pushed to move to L2's you know, earliest, right? I think Synthetics was the first ones on an L2 that was live, right? Like, you know, in Optimism in 2019, 2020. So I was pushing for that for pretty hard because I saw in March 2020 the COVID crash and just how interconnected everything on mainnet had become. And so, you know, anytime there was a large price dislocation, there was this cascade of transactions from like arbitrage that was all automated, right? Which was the whole idea. That was what it's supposed to do. But, you know, you had these contracts that were happy to pay or different people that were happy to arb between contracts and pay infinite money, basically, right? Because these huge pools of capital. And so prices just got crazy and you couldn't use the chain. And so I saw that and I was like, all right, we need to move to Optimism. I pushed really hard for the community to align around a single L2. I was like, if we can all just go to Optimism, do our thing, let them scale, it's going to be great. And if we had, it would have been fine. Instead, we got like 5,000 fucking L2s. And so here we are. Be careful what you wish for. Chalk that one up to unintended consequences.
Is this one of the reasons why you have this vision for Infinex to be the everything app in crypto and to simplify things?
Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons. You know, so it's quite interesting on synthetic side. I'm trying to meme into existence this return to L1. You know, the kind of security of no bridging, access to all the collateral on L1. You know, building more functionality there. And then meanwhile, in Infinex land, I'm like more L2s, giving more chains, more L1s, more L2s, L3s. I don't care. Like as many as you guys can cook up, we'll integrate them, because it's just this kind of progressively increasing complexity that someone needs to abstract away. And I think Infinex is in a good position to do that.
Gotcha. Brett, you wanted to get in there?
Yeah, just a little like, and maybe this is starting to get a little bit more of the product stuff, but like I remember hearing you in a previous interview of like why you thought it was time, or at least the tech was far enough along that we could actually enable that stuff. So it was like the pass keys, and like you're like the pieces are there, it's just no one's put them together. Do you still think there's like the market is lacking like actually using some of these things, like they're underutilized, and that like you saw something different? Like what was the switch that said like, okay, we're at the point we could do this?
You know, the most ironic thing about this has been that the deeper I've gone, the more I've realized that it's actually been there the whole time. A lot of the things that we were doing back in the day, we were doing for ideological reasons, not for UX reasons, right? The audience that we had, you know, for Maker and Uniswap and Compound and Synthetics, that audience was like there for a reason. There was a lot of adverse selection, I guess you could call it, right? In the sense that they were there for, a lot of them as well were already rich, right? So they didn't need to necessarily make money. They'd already made a lot of money on ETH. They were there for the vibes, the ETH vibes, right? And so if you built anything that was kind of antithetical to those ETH vibes, it wouldn't go very well for you. And we saw that happen. There's plenty of DeFi projects that tried to do things differently, and they just got like absolutely stomped into the ground. And you've never heard of them, because like I know of them, right? And you know, I was kind of talking to some of those founders, and they were like, everyone hates us, we don't get it. And it was like, yeah, that's because you didn't do the right thing. And so and it's not even to say like do the right thing in terms of like they did anything wrong. They just made different decisions to what the kind of ideological DAO driven, fully decentralized, you know, model was kind of demanding, and what the audience was demanding. And so the irony for me is that we tried so hard to be fully decentralized for such a long time. And, you know, the best example of this is like dApp hosting. Every single dApp is centralized. The front end is centralized. It's hosted on fucking AWS, right? So anyone who tells you that it's decentralized, it's a joke, right? And so at one point we came up with a solution, which was like, let's pin our dApp front ends to IPFS, which was the literal dumbest fucking idea that you could have possibly come up with. And I was like, yep, that's it. We've nailed it. Let's pin it to IPFS and job done, right? Or like go and use Etherscan. Use the ABI drop-down menu thing on Etherscan to interact with contracts, right? And so there was all this crazy nonsense. And if we had realized how fucking stupid we were being and how impossible it would be to get to any kind of scale and adoption if we kept doing things like that, we could have pivoted much earlier. It just happened that, you know, it took us a long time to pivot, like 4 or 5 years, to realize that what we were doing wasn't working. And in the interim, you know, billions of dollars have been poured into infrastructure, and that infrastructure was, you know, getting to a point of being more robust. But we could have done this in 2020. Like, don't get me wrong, right? Like the thing that I've realized, the longer I go, the more I look at little bits and I'm like, yeah, if we had just tried, like if we had even tried, it would have been fine. So, you know, it's a little bit of cope to say like, oh, it wasn't ready or whatever. No, we were just idiots.
Do you think it was required for other chains to be spun up then and be super successful to kind of slap people a little bit into waking up and create the competition in order for that to happen?
Well, so, you know, it's interesting. There's different dimensions, right? So talk about the Solana Ethereum debate. I remember debating, you know, a bunch of people in the Solana community early on, right? Like SBF, Samani, whatever, saying like, listen, guys, if you want to run your validators inside of AWS, like go nuts, but that's not for us, right? We're over here doing it the pure way. We're the purists. We're doing the right thing. You guys are just LARPing as decentralized or whatever. And you know, when you look at Solana, you're like, it's actually fine. is actually decentralized enough, right? Like, and there's various degrees of like, okay, could a nation state act or whatever. And in the early days, in fairness, right, that design decision that they made meant that it was more attackable, but so was Ethereum in 2015, right? So, it wasn't really a fair comparison to say Ethereum in 2019, 2020 versus Solana in 2019, 2020. So I think at the chain level, there were decisions that were made, particularly by Solana, but also by, Avalanche and BSC and some others, that they were able to capitalize on the fact that Ethereum got very expensive. What I'm more referring to is at like the application level, the dApp level. And the interesting thing is the dApps far more, because they were centralized, were forced into this LARPing towards decentralization in a far more insane way, right? Like labs versus foundation versus DAO versus token governance versus council versus delegated governance, like all of this crazy stuff, right? And it's not to say that governance is bad, but the things that we were doing at the time were not really about efficient governance. They were governance experiments, but they were not really about efficiency, right? If you were like, hey, we want to build an organization that's going to be as efficient as possible, whatever the fuck we came up with in 2020 was not it. That was not the solution.
From when you started with Infinex to now, the competitive landscape, you just mentioned BSC, has changed and evolved. Obviously, like one of the first things when it comes to competitors people would think about is Binance on the one hand, and with the extension of having their own chain as well. But also Hyperliquid has been tremendously successful with billions of assets flowing in there as well. So how do you view both of those? Do you even view them as competitors? How do you view Binance and Hyperliquid, and where do you position yourself in that landscape with Infinex?
Yeah, I think the brilliance of Hyperliquid, right, is that they did both of the things at both levels, right? They made the right design choices for optimal UX at both levels. At the chain level, they're like, all right, 4 validators, like 1 for like whatever, right? Like, there was really no attempt whatsoever to have any kind of censorship resistance, right? Realistically, those validators, were very likely all in the same room most of the time. And so that gave them the L1 narrative, right? But with like so much centralization that they could do stuff that a normal blockchain couldn't do, right? They just like max crank the dial of, centralization, right? Whilst still getting to keep the L1. You could be more centralized. You could have 1 validator, I guess, right? But they were like, oh, let's do 4, and like maybe no one will notice, right? So they did a really good job there. But then they did, I would argue, an even better job at the app layer, right? They did a bunch of things that people had not done, where they were like, well, if we're running on a centralized L1, we might as well have the application be very centralized. And so all of a sudden they had this full stack application that was running on an L1, full control of the UX, full control of the application itself, pulling state and information from other places. And so all of a sudden you have what looks like centralized exchange. It feels like centralized exchange. It's a very good set of trade-offs, but it's decentralized enough that you can be open and not need accounts and be wallet based and all of the stuff that degens love. And so I think that they made the right set of trade-offs there. They're not a competitor to Infinex in my mind, right? Because Infinex is not about building protocols. It's not about building a trading venue. It's about being the UX on top of a trading venue. Now, there's an argument that because Hyperliquid has such good UX and they've done such a good job, but they are very siloed. And this is the same argument I had with DYDX, by the way, in 2020, right? And I think that they were right. And I think they did really well by being more centralized. But it was the thing that at the time I said, DYDX is on their own little island, especially when they went to Cosmos, right? Who the fuck is ever going to go to Cosmos? The only reason to go there was DYDX, right? So they had this little island that they were stuck on and couldn't really connect to anyone else. And Hyperliquid's kind of done that deliberately. What Infinex is looking to do is connect to chains and applications and build the best UX around those and abstract away the effort of getting from one to the other, right? And so between, you know, new chains coming out like Monad and Fogo and Mega ETH, you know, we are going to make it as easy as possible for people to find the best applications on them, not worry about bridging, not worry about gas, not worry about any of that stuff. And my thesis is that as good as Hyperliquid has been for the last, you know, 2 or 3 years, it's hard to beat everyone. Like someone somewhere is going to come up with a good thing that has really, you know, great liquidity or better UX or whatever. And, you know, we're already seeing Lighter is, you know, kind of starting to get a little bit of traction, right? People are interested. So there's always going to be a competitor knocking on the door.
Yeah, you're living on an island thing makes me think of like L3s. Like that's what like L3s feel like going and dying on an island to me. Like we saw people do it from like Farcaster. They went and did the degen chain and stuff. It's like, bro, like don't do it.
Yeah, it's like I heard you like fragmentation, so I fragmented your fragment. Like,
yo, bro,
right.
yo, dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right, so you're talking like you mentioned all these chains and like trying to get connected with them. So Infinex Connect was announced recently. Like, can you expand on that a little bit, and like how you think that's actually going to be able to keep up with like? There's going to be a lot of chains. There's going to be like some are very high performance, some are slow. Like, how does Infinex Connect slot into that, and like how is it going to keep up with this ecosystem that is constantly adjusting?
I think Infinex Connect is our answer to how to keep up with the ecosystem, because what we found, you know, I think we've got 20 different liquidity providers now in Switch. Right?
And maybe like give a high level of what Infinex Connect is. I guess we have some people in the audience who mentioned that.
Yeah, sure. So basically what Infinex Connect is a piece of software that allows an external dApp developer to build an Infinex-like experience. So if you've used Infinex, you know what it feels like. It's different. It doesn't feel like a dApp. It doesn't have gas. It doesn't have, you know, all of this stuff. It feels even better, I would say, arguably, than Hyperliquid because it's not siloed. Like Hyperliquid feels great inside its silo, but it's annoying even to get from the Arbitrum bridge and, you know, deposit or whatever. Infinex just feels different. It abstracts away all of that stuff. And so the question is, okay, you've abstracted everything away. You built yield, yield solutions into the platform. You've built swapping and bridging into the platform. You know, we have 15 different chains or whatever, and 20 different liquidity sources, you know, from Intense to AMMs to, you know, weird shit on Berachain. And we're still like 0.001% of the stuff that's available, right? And we're never going to be able to catch up. Even if, and, you know, we had this conversation where I was like, okay, we have 30 engineers. What if we had 300 engineers? How much faster could we go? And it was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 times faster, right? And it's like, well, that's not going to do it. Like we're at like 0.001% penetration into like all the different things that are available in crypto. We got to go faster, right? And then it's like, okay, what about another order of magnitude? If we had 3,000 engineers, it's like, actually, that would be slower. So it's like, all right, well, that's not the solution. We gotta find a different pathway. And so, you know, what we said is we've built this full stack application that has been able to sidestep this gravity well that MetaMask created in 2016 and how wallets are supposed to interact. And it doesn't matter whether it's an embedded wallet or a mobile wallet or a browser wallet or Mist or whatever, you know, the wallet does the same thing, and it's forced into this interface because the way dApps and wallets interact, where neither of them can innovate. They're both stuck talking to each other, and they can't break out of it. And Infinex just was like, whatever, we'll build our own wallet and our own app, and we'll just do it a different way. And we did that, and we've got this full stack application now. And we're like, we should really let other people use this because they're going to be able to build much cooler stuff. And you know, that is what it means to not be on an island, right? To be interoperable, to be able to let people, you know, leverage what you've built to you know, make new things. And then what will happen is your assets that are in your Infinex account, you'll be able to, on day one, when Mega ETH launches, there'll be, you know, hopefully 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dApps that all support Infinex Connect, and you just go to them and use them. Like, we haven't had a chain launch in a long time where you just go to it and use it. It's always like, what's the wallet and what browser extension and what, you know, do I go to DeFi Llama to swap? And, you know, there's like this multi-stage thing we've got to figure out how to do stuff. Infinex is just like, oh, I heard about noise, and you just show up and start pressing buttons on the dApp that day.
Yeah, that would be super interesting. And the other example that I think of, which I think is, again, like a challenge to keep up with, is on the earn side. So one of the things I always like to do, the thing that I've been desperate for a really long time, is a portfolio page, which I can like reliably trust, which actually tracks the various things, and something
we don't have the technology
to have. Yeah, this is it's just never happened in crypto where you can actually just track what you own properly. It's unbelievable. But the thing that I have, I mean, I'm guessing everyone has this in their computer, got like 100 tabs open. And it's like, okay, I've got to keep in, like, right, so this amount of money is in Athena, this amount of money is here, this amount of money is there. And so to be able to have those earn options is super important to me. And I know, so you've got a staked USDE one live at the moment at Infinex. My question is, how do you keep up with those metas and preferred allocations? Because that's one kind of stablecoin option at the moment, but even those, you know, there's a variety of places that you want to be, right? And ideally you have as many of those as possible, just to give people the option to where to park their stable coins. Yields change all the time. So how are you thinking about that? And how many options do you think people need? Do you want to try and give them all the options possible? Is there a cutoff period? How do you make that decision?
It's a very good question. So we have a couple of engineers that are very deep in the kind of AI coding space, right? They do crazy stuff all the time that like you just would never have been able to do, you know, prior to Cursor or Claude or whatever. And I've been getting into it myself, and it's pretty wild. It's gotten really crazy in the last few weeks.
I was just gonna ask that. I saw you tweeting on it. You're getting vibe codey.
It's nuts. I've literally got my machine sitting here just coding away, just sitting right next to us while we're talking. And they built this LLM based yield aggregator, right? And they've had a few different tries at it because it's hard to know exactly what the interface should look like for this. But basically where we've landed is you have discovery and orchestration are the two things that you need to be able to nail, right? So, you know, your question of how many things should you have? Well, in theory, you should have all of the things, right? Now, should you display all of those things to a user? No, right? But you should let the user express a preference, and then you should know all of the things that are possible, and you should be able to say, hey, here you go. Here's the thing. You want a ETH-based, you know, low risk yield, you know, with no liquidations. Okay, yeah, here you go, right? And you can flip that around a bunch of different ways. I just want to do what Bread's doing. Okay, cool, like easy. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can if you want, right? You know, so you can do copy trading, you can do whatever. So that's the discovery side, right? So now you go, okay, yeah, I want to do what Bread's doing. And then he's like, yeah, cool, here's my spreadsheet. And there's like 50 tabs and like, you know, all of this crazy stuff going on, right? And you're like, well, I don't want, like, what the fuck, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I don't know how to do this, right? And then it's like, oh, no, is that what you want to do? And you go, yeah, I want to do it. Same structure. I want to put 10 grand into it, right? And then you just press a button and it goes and routes the money to all of those different pools in the same proportions. Because it's very, very good once you give it structured data, LLMs, at finding paths from one thing to another, right? And so what you end up with is an interface that is what we're kind of thinking is like just-in-time interfaces. So imagine, right, that Bread was like, my yield structure is the best one. And so I'm going to build a dApp. And it's going to have like 50 buttons and you can click all the things and you can like do all this stuff, right? And so he spends like, I don't know, whatever, 3 months building this dApp, right? It's like an Insta dApp, but, you know, Bread's version of it, right? And it just has all of his protocols that he likes and, you know, whatever. And you're like, okay, that's cool. And it's now done, right? But then 2 weeks later, all of the different things have changed. So you got to rebuild the interface. So the way that we think about it is like, you want an interface that is kind of just in time. There's too much complexity to try and build this into a single thing where you click one button, right? You just want to say, tell me the things that are like this, and it tells you, and then it gives you a button or a little structure that says like, here's how that's going to play out. You've got USDC, and it's going to go from, you know, Arbitrum to Optimism, and it's going to go into this pool, and then we're going to borrow against that, and it's going to show you the whole path through the thing. And you go, yeah, that's what I want to do, and you press the button, and it does it. And that's a very different thing to how people have kind of been imagining this like LLM based trading or whatever, where you say like, buy me Bitcoin. It's like, no, like we've solved that one. That's okay. Like we need, there's more complicated stuff that we can solve with these tools. So that's the idea.
The just-in-time interface, actually, like, because I've heard a lot of people refer to AI may potentially replacing like websites. Like it can be the all thing, everything. And I've always had a hard time visualizing that. It's just like it's just still the text-based thing. But the just-in-time UI in the context of AI being able to like honestly spin that stuff up instantaneously based on like your own like preferences. I can actually kind of see this stuff. So that actually helps me visualize a little bit of like what an AI interface future might actually look like.
Yeah, I've got there's one of the guys put a video in here. I probably shouldn't leak it because I'll be stealing his yaps.
You should definitely leak it. Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can find it. But basically, it actually looks like Cursor. Interestingly, it looks like 3 panels, right? One where it's like the chat interface, and then another one which like shows you the routes through all the things, and then a third one which is like, okay, execute, and shows you like the execution stack. It's pretty cool, but I can't find it, unfortunately. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, you're good. Well, I mean, you're kind of getting into some of the developer stuff. So, I mean, do you want to do a short snippet on like with the SDK that was just dropped, the Infinex SDK for developers to tap into?
Yeah, so the SDK, we're just about to release it. We're using it internally at the moment to build a new version of AAVE. So, you look at AAVE and it's old, and we all like it, of course, but it is old. And the first thing that you've got is this big drop-down menu of like, which markets do you want, and all the different chains, and then you go and select the chain, then you go in and you do stuff, and it's like it's kind of an insane way of doing things. When we first started thinking about this, we'd been in Infinex land for so long that I actually couldn't reason about the chain switching thing in browser extensions, and it took us like it took me an hour to like put the context back in my head of like how like chain IDs worked and like the routing and and what have you. But it's just much better if you don't need to think about chains, right? So you think about, what does a multi-chain AAVE look like? Well, you turn up there and you go, I want the ETH market, and there's 7 ETH markets across 7 different chains or whatever, and they've got different rates and different liquidity and different, so, okay, just optimize my yield across the best 2 of those. Why the fuck should I need to click through 7 things and be like, oh, 5%, 3%, 2%? Because the only reason why AAVE works like that, it's not because they're bad at UX, right? Like, look at Family Wallet. They're very good at UX. It's because of fucking MetaMask. You can't have 2 chains in context at the same time with MetaMask. You just can't. It doesn't support it. So you got to pick your chain, and then you go to another chain, and you go back and forth, and it switches chains. This is the most retarded thing you can imagine in 2025, but here we are.
Still blowing my mind how many people are using MetaMask, but that's a different topic. We are getting slowly towards the end of the show, but we have a couple more questions I want to cover. So
Sure, let's do it.
I'm gonna pivot to raising. You chose a quite different approach, especially back then, for raising 65M by selling 41,000 patrons out of the 100,000, with you holding the other 50K or so. Community got in at the same terms as the VCs, with the average NFT being bought for 1.6K. Speak about the patrons quite often in the show. I feel like B-Check is breaking down how that works exactly every other month or so. So why did you choose this approach? Obviously makes you one of the largest, if not the largest, NFT collection by market cap, if you look at it. And would you have gone for an NFT raise again?
I mean, if I was doing it today, no. Like pluses and minuses, right? There's some pluses. One of the pluses, I think, is that the most important thing in my mind in crypto is that if you're going to be aligned with a project, you need to have high conviction, right? And having a liquid JPEG that makes no fucking sense, and there's like 50 of them on market, right? Like, you have to have a lot of conviction to be like, yeah, I'm buying this thing. You really need to understand, like, no one's stumbling in to patrons and being like, oh, what is this? And maybe I'll buy one, right? Like, even an NFT person looks at it and goes, wait, it's all the same picture. That doesn't make any sense, right? There's not a very good PFP set. And so, you know, we're in this weird uncanny valley where it's like super liquid. You can't buy more than, I don't even know, like 50 ETH worth or something like that, right? At a time. You know, it trades like 20K a day or something like that. It's like the most hilariously illiquid thing in crypto, maybe for its market cap. And you know, and yet if someone wants to buy a couple of patrons, they can. And so if someone sees this and they're like, holy shit, I didn't know anything about it, and then they go and look at this and they're like, oh wow, this is really cool, right? So you know, it's a good thing in the sense that it's not everywhere. It's not on Binance. It's not on Bybit. We haven't made it easy for people to get it. You really need to be early and have conviction. And you know, my biggest thing, and I saw this firsthand with synthetics, right? The people who in 2019 were like, these guys are still building. Like, most people were dead. By the time we got to 2019, most people were dead. But all through 2019, the synthetics team was grinding so hard, building so much. We like came out with like yield farming and like the deals with these Uniswap pools and like liquidity incentives and inflationary, like it was just like constant every month, like some new thing. And if you were there and paying attention, you're like, okay, this is either going to zero or like this is going to work, right? And I think that those people, you know, stayed with the project, and there's some of them that are still around today. You know, that have built that level of conviction. They're like, okay, it's going through some dark times, but like we're here for it. And I think that having the Patron NFT be the way that it is, and eventually it will turn into a token, of course, right? But this period now is like, you know, the you know, pre-butterfly period, right? Where it's like still in its cocoon, it hasn't quite come out yet. So you know, there's going to be there's going to be, I think, a point in time where people are going to look back and be like, okay, I see.
Yeah, so that's one of the things when people ask me about it, you're talking about what it takes to build conviction. You also need to read, like a reasonable.
I mean, who's reading, bro? Like, come on.
I don't know, because whenever I've spoken to people about it, and this is something I wrote back in, that for people listening in, I'm just showing on screen my thesis, which I shared in September 2024. But it was an interesting mechanic. So you allowed everyone basically to buy. I don't know if it was as many as they wanted.
It was close.
It was close in the end, because but you had these different price tiers, and this is obviously super important from an investor perspective. If people are listening in, thinking about everything from the investor side, like you need to know how the NFTs were distributed and their vesting mechanisms in order to come to a decent decision. So if you wanted to buy at 5K, there was 0 cliff and no lockup. If you wanted to buy at 3K, that was a 40% discount with a 12-month linear unlock, but no cliff. And depending on how many you bought would determine the regularity with which you would kind of unlock over 12 months. And then you had this very much cheaper option, 75% discount to 5K, which was, but then you had a hard cliff of 12 months, and then the vesting starts after that. And interestingly, for your raise, the vast majority went for this full cliff 12-month.
Yeah, that was the most shocking thing to us. I was really surprised. Yeah.
What was
shocking? I mean, I think at the end of the day, like we were expecting it to be like, you know, if you're a DGen and you get a chance to buy something with no cliff, you know, like back in my day, at least, like you take the no cliff, right? I don't know, maybe DGens are more sophisticated these days, but yeah, it was like less than 1% took the no cliff, and then you know, like the vast majority took the cliff. I mean, interestingly, that cliff is coming up. It's in, you know, October or whatever, right? So you know, we're 6 months away from that. You know, we'll see where we land token wise. But you know, it has been interesting that we've had this period of time where we're sort of post TG but pre TG. It's kind of that. I think that's one of the biggest benefits, maybe, is this weird kind of situation we found ourselves in, where the token is live but not very liquid and not on any exchanges. So
Indeed.
I think the answer is that everyone's poor.
Well, that's so. This is the other problem, right? Like it's $6,000. It's not nothing, you know. It's not like 50 XRP, right? Like you gotta back up the truck a little bit, which is the downside, right? That's the downside. It's one of the reasons why with the Kaito campaign we've just done, we have micro patrons, right? 1/1,000th of a patron, because they're like sub a cent, which is way better. You know, 0.5 cent.
I literally just learned that's like, yeah, obviously you had the little micro thing, but yeah, it's a micro patron. That's hilarious. I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, Mew.
Yeah.
Talking of the Yaprun initiative, that's obviously got a lot of people quite excited, and I think you've done things slightly differently. There's 4 seasons, $6 million in rewards. At least that was the projected reward amount when it was first announced. I think the top person in season 0 got $40,000, or that's the amount that it was projected at the time. You're also the first guys who have added a layer of like manual review into the process. Very curious. We talk about the whole Kaito movement influence now. What are you optimizing for? What kind of content do you want to see? And how's that kind of whole experience been for you? Bandits just farming yaps here by
oh yeah, 100%. Always. So look, the thing yeah, look, I don't know. Like honestly, like yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. It's too late in the evening. I'm running out of steam. It's 10:30 p.m. and I've been up since like 4 a.m. or something. So
fair enough. It's been I think it's something which from a participant perspective, I think it's like worn out a lot of people as well.
I'm trying to think of like the way to say it without like giving away. I'm like, I don't trust myself to be like, oh yeah, the algo is this, right? And then like the next day they're gonna kill me. Look, I think there's 2 things. Kaito, you know, I love Kaito, right? And I think they're really, really good, and I think they're working very hard. But they are, you know, still early, and I'm just too grizzled and battle scarred to not know how this goes, right? And so when we started looking at it, I was like, this is going to be gamed to absolute, like just to oblivion, right? And so we were not willing to just go all in on their raw algo. We've been collaborating with them and being like, hey guys, by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you know, if a person does this and this and this, they get a bunch of yaps, and they're like, thanks for the heads up. So, you know, we've been throwing a lot of analytics resources at this to make sure that we get it right. But ultimately what we're looking for is good content. And the funny part is, right, like when this first came out, the bots were like so hilariously against this, right? They were losing their minds, right? I say they were losing their minds. It's like one fucking guy with like 100,000 bots, right, is like running, and it's so sophisticated. It's crazy. And they're pretending to work in projects. There's like thousands of them, and they all have a similar vibe, style, PFP, bio. The bio is like ambassador for this, or like, you know, project lead at this. And it's like, you don't work that project. What the fuck are you talking about? It's just a bot, because the guy's just like pulled a bunch of data and like created a thing that looks like a person or whatever. So it was quite funny. You know, obviously I respect the bots. Like the bots have got to eat, but it's my job to squash them. So, you know, they're not going to appreciate it when we do.
Makes sense.
I'm always surprised at like how in a permissionless and somewhat anonymous environment, to the extremes that people will go at. Basically in every single direction that we have, like someone will take it to the extreme and then do a +1 on top of that. It's just I'm always amazed to see this kind of
You're like, surely this can't get any crazier. And it's like, nope.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah.
100,000 botnet with customized PFPs, and like, oh, then someone has to one up him. It's just, yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
All right.
It's crazy.
Okay, and I very much appreciate it's like getting super late. Really appreciative of your time. I think it's been a great conversation. Just final thing, in case we've missed anything, what are you looking forward to now? Is there next iteration of the product that you want to share? Airdrop, TGE, timeline, anything that you'd like to get the message out on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Infinex Connect is coming out. We're gonna have our first internal dApps. So I've been it's really funny, right? We made Bull Run. We haven't talked about Bull Run at all, right? And Bull Run is this very tense thing internally, because it takes up so much fucking bandwidth, because there's so many bots playing it, but also a lot of people as well, right? There's like solidly like 5 to 10,000 people that play it all the time, but then there's like another like 40,000 bots or something like that play it every day as well, and it's really hard to tell the difference. We know the difference, and we're going to nerf all the bots at the end. So if you're a bot guy watching, like, good luck to you, but you're not getting any points out of this. We've been really clear about it, and we absolutely know who they are. So we're gonna nerf all the bots, and we're gonna give all the points that the bots have earned to the people who would have otherwise earned them, right? Like I've said that a bunch of times, right? Which, even if it wasn't like positive EV from like a user value perspective, it's too fun for me to be able to like go and like nuke a bunch of bots from space, right?
Yeah, you
and
look like
so
you've been enjoying the nerf.
oh, I love it. It's crazy. And so that's the first thing. So I have this Bull Run game, and when I made Bull Run, I had this vision for like NFTs and trading and stuff. It was going to be much more like fantasy top. And then the engineers were like, no, sorry, we're not doing all that shit, right? And I was like, okay, fine. So cut to like 2 weeks ago, not even 2 weeks ago, like 10 days ago. It was late at night. I went to one of the engineers and I was like, dude, you got to stop posting videos and pretending like it's actually functional stuff. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, you had that Swidge Hero thing. And he was like, no, that's functional. And I was like, no, it's not. And he's like, watch this. And he like goes to his Swidge interface on dev, types in a command or like clicks the button 8 times or some weird thing, right? And the whole thing spins around and he's playing a game inside of the Swidge interface. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, I like vibe coded it. And I was like, okay, this is like not what I was expecting. And so the next day I got set up with a dev machine, and I'd had this idea for, I don't know if you guys know like NetHack, like the old school turn-based role-playing games like Angband or Moria or whatever. So I'd had this idea for a game for a long time of like a Pudgy Penguins themed one of these, right? And I was like, I wonder if I could vibe code this, because like 6 months ago, there were a couple of engineers, and I pulled them in. I was like, hey, do you guys think that you could build this? Because they were working on other projects and they were looking for something to do. And they're like, yeah, it would take like 6 months or a year. And that was like really, really cut down functionality. I've built this thing and it's like not quite ready, but it's so much more feature dense, right? In 10 days. Like single-handedly in 10 days. It's fucking wild. So the thing that I'm excited for is to release it, because it's also been like absolute drudgery. There's been a few days of just like grinding on things and not being able to like solve stuff, but it's wild how good Claude 4 is.
I want to be in the Infinex office where you're just like, everyone's like, dealing with all the NFTs, like Patreon's okay, we're dealing with it. And then like walk by Kain's office, like, Kain, guy, we need you to like get over here. I know you're vibe coding a Pudgy Penguins game and it's going to be crushing. It's just like, it feels like good energy.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. Obviously everyone's very busy all the time. And I'm really busy. I don't know where I probably put like 100 hours into this in the last 10 days, which you would say like is physically impossible.
Sometimes you just got to scratch the itch. I'm the same type of personality where like you get fixated on something. Like, okay, we got to do this.
Exactly. Like literally, I'm like, I need to go to bed after this, but like my fucking machine's sitting there staring at me being like, just 3 more commits, bro. Let's do it.
Love it, man. That sounds really, really exciting.
That's coming. That's coming. Tower Run.
Thanks so much for joining us, man. If anyone is watching in and they want to know what to follow, this is Kain's account. It's at KAIYNNE, and of course, the Infinex account is at Infinex, INFINEX. Thanks so much for joining us. As usual, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X video, YouTube, and you can catch us on Apple and Spotify too. Kain, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Every day. Jesus. Psychos. Wow.
Every day. Take care, guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye.